Warning, this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. What is the creepiest / most disturbing internet rabbit hole you've gone down, and why? A straightforward guy wrote down his experiences with heroin. Basically, he wanted to try it for fun and he was sure that he had enough willpower to stop after that. Well, he was wrong. Probably someone can remember the name of the guy or the Reddit post. It's fairly well known, I believe. Same thing happened on a Norwegian forum. Some guy asked how to shoot up, and the thread turned into a years-long diary of him becoming an addict and failing to quit. Then he just stopped posting and some time later it was revealed he had died. Turned into a media case for a while, his mom was interviewed and stuff. Saudi Arabia's leading executioner, Mohammed Saad al-Beshi. He mostly decapitates people with a sword. I watched/read interviews with him. I wanted to know if that shit haunts him. No, it doesn't. He's already teaching his son to follow in his footsteps. His children also help him clean the blood off his sword. Then I started looking into what was considered capital offenses and other punishments used. Stoning is one. Certain crimes will get the beheaded body crucified. I bought my brother a taser from Amazon for his birthday one time. Looking at some of the questions, there was one asking if it hurt. The answer went something like, "It does not. I've tased myself in the neck 30 times. Very interested in this, I go to his Amazon profile where you can see what else he has reviewed, and he reviewed a katana and stuff like that of similar nature. Still interested, so I type his name into Facebook and find a profile with a picture of him holding his katana. The first thing I notice is that he's from my city. Second thing is there are so many people posting to his Facebook saying he's the devil and they can't believe what he done and that they hope he rots and stuff like that. Extremely interested at this point, I googled his name and find news articles that he stabbed a guy in the chest in his apartment with a katana. Then fled and was later caught by police. Turns out he was very delusional and really needed help. He's now in jail, and according to the article looks like he's getting the help he needs. It was a very wild ride from just looking at the stupid questions people ask about products on Amazon. I ordered the stun gun on July 31, 2018. The article linked was posted on July 25, 2018. Edit, screenshot of answer on Amazon and the news article. Elon School. It's pretty famous, but for those who never heard of it, American school that lasted for 40 years that was as close to a concentration camp for children as you could get. The whole troubled teen industry is a disturbing and infuriating rabbit hole. At least Elon School is shut down, but there are similar institutions that are still in operation today. Parents can pay to have their kids kidnapped and imprisoned at these institutions for just about any reason, from actual mental illness to just not sharing the same religion as their parents. Paris Hilton actually went to one in Utah in the 90s. The therapeutic boarding school industry is huge in Utah, because of course. I've been following the Breaking Code Silence account on Instagram. It's infuriating how frequently this is happening to kids today. I really recommend calling on your representatives and demand that these schools be regulated. The troubled teen industry has been enabled by both Democrats and Republicans. It's shameful. My best friend recently escaped one. She was brought in as an addicted teen with trauma, and basically abused until she complied with treatment. That led to being severely brainwashed and accepting a job there to help other kids like her and never leave. I met her a few years ago and she was already putting the pieces together that something wasn't right. I think in the back of her mind she knew that was basically a cult and the TTI wrapped into one. It was like watching a friend come to terms with admitting that they're in an abusive marriage. It was hard to sit back and watch. But she's an entire queen, and due to current litigation I can't say much, but she's dismantling the TTI schools in her area piece by piece. It's beautiful. I wish more people were aware of these places. They're not just scared straight and wilderness therapies. There's really sketchy drug rehabs for juvenile offenders that are sent there by the courts even though these programs are not tied to the court. They get money from the kids/parents for the stay, file their insurance and also enroll them in Medicaid for additional money, etc. They're closely tied to city and state governments and our tax dollars basically go to subsidize the abuse of children. It's sick shit. Blogs by people who are obsessed with losing limbs and or having them replaced with hooks, etc. Some went through with accidents where they mashed their hands beyond repair in order to achieve their goal. Reminds of that guy from South Africa who had a blog I came across a few years ago. His thing was amputations, and he badly wanted to get his perfectly healthy foot amputated for whatever reason. He felt like it didn't belong to his own body. He would inflict injuries to his foot by cutting it with a knife, then put it in a bucket full of his own poop to cause infection. It was all documented, with daily pictures. You could literally see the daily progression of his foot rotting and becoming black, Until one day he stopped posting. He came back a few weeks later and wrote he almost died. He had passed out because of a bad case of sepsis, blood infection, and his landlord found him in the bathroom. Crazy stuff. And yes, he came back from hospital with his foot amputated. One of the weirdest for me was reading about the violence in Yugoslavia during World War II, especially about the Croatian Ustaše and the Jasenovac concentration camp. The entire area was beset by civil war, with shocking violence originating from multiple parties, but the anecdotes about the Ustaše stand out. A high-ranking member of the Nazi Party visited Croatia, where the Nazis had helped establish a puppet state. Witnessing the extent of the violence himself, he was quoted as saying, "This is enough to make a man vomit." Jasenovac is something no mortal man could bear to witness. There's a doc called The Bridge, which captured 23 of the 24 suicides from the Golden Gate Bridge in SF in 2004. Apparently the bridge is a wildly popular suicide site. By 2004, there had been more than 1,200 suicides, with a 98% death rate. Anyway, it's really dark and sent me on a little research expedition of the suicides. Apparently, the 2% that survive say they instantly regretted jumping midair. And that starts to make you think about suicides and how much pain people are in to take that step, and yet there is a shock of clarity once they've done the irreversible. Just reading about that desperation and sadness triggered so much in me, I really can't go down those rabbit holes anymore. Pulled up a site once that had pictures of celebs that were taken after they died, the most prominent one I remember being that of Chris Farley. Fuck, that's something I'll never forget. My brother killed himself with a friend last Halloween while hiking Mount Rainier. Their bodies were discovered by some hikers who proceeded to upload pics of their bodies to a gay death fetish site. I guess some info got out, but now every week I get people contacting me about his body, asking me if I have more pics or blaming my family for his death through whatever social media they can find, mostly his memorial page. It can be extremely mean. It doesn't bother most of my family much, we know how to deal with trolls and perverts, but it destroys my mom. Never forget the purpose of the communities you visit. To you that celebrity site is just a passing curiosity, but this is a site with an active community that seeks out corpses to wank to. They are highly fucked up at best, and are likely extremely dangerous considering some of these threats I've gotten. I did a bit of research about school shootings around the world, from Columbine to the most recent one in Mexico at the time. It was terrifying to read the survivors' testimonies. I just imagined what would I do if that happened in my school, and ended up crying thinking about my little brother's fate in those circumstances. Also, the statistical analysis and studies about the topic are unnerving, since they seem to be more frequent globally every year. And I hated getting to know about those groups that praise shooters. I would prefer if I didn't know those exist. It's frustrating. History of the Aztecs and Mayans. Specifically about all the human sacrifice they did. I think the Aztecs sacrificed at least one person a day, and there was one event that historians/archaeologists speculated some number in the thousands. Super interesting, but must have been nuts to come across that as an outsider. A sci-fi timeline PDF I found a while back, I think it was on the World Building sub. It was a timeline of humanity that started it off relatively normal, detailing human evolution as they colonized Mars and the stars beyond. It descended into body horror when they came into contact with an advanced race that for some reason I forget gene-modded the majority of humans into non-sentient species and seeded them across the galaxy. It then went into great detail with each of these species separately and their climb back to sentience. It ended with one of the new humans that evolved back to sentience standing beside original human skull. I haven't been able to find it since, but shit got dark. Edit, I found it again. It's All Tomorrows, a billion-year chronicle of the myriad species and varying fortunes of man. Link here if anyone wants it. Temple OS is a trip worth the read. The guy behind it was pretty genuinely insane, literally and figuratively. He used his home brew operating system to talk to God, and believed he was married to a YouTuber that didn't talk to him. Truly a sad story. He often called himself the greatest programmer who ever lived, and he's right, he coded an entire OS by himself. He was a genuinely nice guy when he wasn't spewing out craziness. Struggled with schizophrenia, was stuck by a train and died, but investigators couldn't decide whether it was suicide or not. There's this guy on Facebook, I wish I could remember his name, but he married his doll and has photos together of them everywhere. At first I thought it was a troll account, but the more I looked the creepier it got. The dates on the photos dated back years, and he showed off his doll's wardrobe and all the possessions he had of hers, and then There were multiple friend accounts of different sex dolls on his page that's completely public, but genuinely the weirdest part to me was that he lived on a farm in the middle of nowhere. Like, imagine if someone accidentally ended up there. Edit. I spent an hour last night looking for it, and surprisingly it's apparently more common than I thought. WTF is wrong with people anyways? I'll look some more today because it was a viral share. I read about the Japanese concentration camps being especially horrible on Reddit, and that was extremely depressing and fucked up, but I couldn't bring myself to stop reading. Yeah, I fell down the Unit 731 rabbit hole for a while back in 2018. I think I felt weird for a full week afterwards. One thing that stuck with me was reading an interview with a surviving scientist who, when asked if he felt guilty, he responded, "No. We did nothing wrong. This was war, and in war, you have to win." A relative of mine is a social worker who deals with older people. She helped arranging care for a man with Alzheimer's a few years ago. Unfortunately, a lot of people with this disease regress into very old memories. This man had been a prisoner of war of the Japanese, been subject to torture and all sorts. He was in a constant state of terror because his memory had regressed to the point where he thought he was back there and there was nothing anyone could do about it for him. Absolutely awful. Reading about John Jones, the spelunker who got stuck upside down in a narrow crevice at Nutty Putty Cave in 2009, scared the hell out of me. Rescuers got to his feet, talked to him for hours, but just couldn't get him out. Ultimately, the cave was sealed with his body inside. I was a lurker in a car forum for many years. This was probably 8 or so years ago. One time someone posted a thread that linked to an insurance, auto, website that resold accident cars to reclaim money. There was a whole category of cars labeled biohazard, and these are the cars that end up with body fluids in them, giant shits from being in an accident, drive-by shootings with blood everywhere, even suicide cars with brains blasted on the roof. These auto auctions don't want to clean that mess up, so they will sell the cars cheap. Some people in the forum even found news articles that corresponded with the murder/accident/etc. in a particular car. It was incredibly creepy. But I admittedly spent hours and hours sometimes looking through these disgusting, tragic cars. Serial killers. Never could understand what could drive someone into such depravity. People sometimes mistake my curiosity for them as a fandom. I despise them. They just piqued my curiosity. Something about trying to comprehend the incomprehensible that makes it so interesting. I once found the manuscript for the Toy Box Killer online, and it fucked me up for a few weeks. The murder of Junko Furuta. Just read it. Those kids are literal fucking demons. Even most cartel tortures don't last that long. Poor girl, literally suffered for absolutely nothing. It sickens me every time she's brought up that her killers rejoined society. All but one have been arrested again for violent crimes. I watched a video about her when I was around 9 years old. The video talked about it in full detail. I saw it while going through my FB feed, then saw the video saying this is not for the faint of heart, and I thought, I'm brave enough. I can do this. I finished the video, and to this day, that was the most disturbing thing I ever knew about. Even the mention of it just makes me uncomfortable. The group stalking sites and subreddit. Just to be clear, I don't think it's real, but holy shit. It's just so crazy thinking about how all these people are dead-ass convinced that there are massive conspiracies against them. I didn't leave the link on purpose because after spending any significant amount of time on there, you sort of start to think it could be real. The Holodomor. It's constantly denied, not taught in American schools at all, and an example of how terrible humans can be to each other, the government to the people, and how far people will go to survive. After a whole bunch of digging, I found a book of translated testimonies of survivors. I wouldn't know about it at all if it weren't for a comment on Reddit 2 years ago that caused me to Google. And down the rabbit hole I went. Could I get a summary? A mass starvation event in the early 1930s in Soviet Ukraine. At least 3 million died of starvation. The cause is still academically debated. Either mismanagement or a deliberate act by Stalin to suppress Ukrainian political opposition. It's also known as the terror famine. The word means to kill by starvation. The accounts of the survivors are harrowing. A woman doctor wrote to a friend in June 1933 that she had not yet become a cannibal, but was not sure that I shall not be one by the time my letter reaches you. The good people died first. Those who refused to steal or to prostitute themselves died. Those who gave food to others died. Those who refused to eat corpses died. Those who refused to kill their fellow man died. Parents who resisted cannibalism died before their children did. Jonestown Massacre. A cult lead town that all were coerced into suicide. There's an audio recording on YouTube of the whole town committing mass suicide. Albert Fish, a cannibal serial killer that wrote a letter to the parents of one of the little girls he ate. Edit, I thought of 3 others, because I'm weird I guess and I know a lot of fucked up things. Number 1. The murder of Sylvia Likens. It's a really fucked up story about a girl who was being horrifically abused for months. Number 2. Thalidomide was an over-the-counter drug sold mostly in Germany, marketed as being safe for pregnant women, mostly being to help with dizziness and morning sickness among a few other things. However, mothers who used thalidomide most certainly gave birth to babies with birth defects, primarily with shortened or missing limbs. Some of the thalidomide babies ended up just fine and very successful, but this was the 1960s, so many were terribly mistreated. The company still hasn't done anything to make up for it. I have fallen down too, both lasted about a week. First was John/Jane Does who have never been claimed or identified. Second was people who have disappeared without a trace. I feel this one tugged more on my emotional strings, especially stories involving kids. One that has stuck with me is a little boy who disappeared on a scout hike, Jared Negrete. That is one of my greatest fears when I take kids hiking. I wanted to learn more about gender dysphoria to better understand trans people and such. I learned about this set of twins, Bruce and Brian Reimer, born in the 1960s. They were boys, but Bruce had a botched circumcision, so he had gender reassignment surgery and was raised as a girl, named Brenda. The twins were sent to a doctor named John Money who wanted to prove that gender identity is learned. He made the twins as children roleplay in certain positions to reinforce the gender reassignment. Brian developed schizophrenia in his teenage years and Brenda never learned to live as a girl despite constant reinforcement and hormone therapy. At 14, he was told of his surgery at birth, rejected his forced female identity and took on the name David. David Reimer committed suicide in 2004. This will sound mild compared to the stories of actual torture and war crimes, but I heard the whole story about a Reddit user named Jason in Hell. For those who don't know, it was the real story of a man who posted in r/relationships about his wife cheating on him with a neighbor. Jason finally decides he's going to leave his wife and take the kids with him, but then the wife actually murdered the children while he was away at work. Jason made a follow-up post about dealing with the pain and grief of what happened, but he seems to be doing his best despite everything that happened. Edit, thank you for all the awards, guys. I didn't expect this to blow up at all. For those who mention the channel, yes, I do remember this from Nexpo. I'm a long-time subscriber. Cave diving accidents. They're always tragic and sad and insanely common in the community due to the dangers of cave diving. But they have been to some of the most untouched areas of Earth and I kind of get the need to keep exploring even if it's dangerous. I read about a pair of blokes who realized their line had snapped and they were trapped in an air pocket with only enough oxygen for one of them to try and escape for help. Dude had to wait in the pitch black for hours not knowing if his friend had reached help or died along the way. Scares the crap out of me. I can barely bring myself to swim under small stuff in safe swimming pools. I've never tried diving and I really don't think I could conquer that fear. While looking at bird videos, I came across a compilation of Russians on how to create/birth homunculi using eggs and sperm. Watch at your own risk. I'm pretty sure all of the creatures seen in the videos are fake, but I couldn't help watch the entire series. Something about those videos still haunts me to this day. Seeing those creatures move and even blink. Deaths on Mount Everest and how a lot of the bodies are still up there. This was a wiki rabbit hole I fell into after listening to the Case File episode on David Sharp. Read not only about him but also Green Boots, this couple that got separated, etc. due to the extremely cold temperatures. The bodies aren't that decomposed so they still look recent even though it's been years or decades. It's creepy and sad. Some bodies have been there so long they are used as markers for climbers. What is also sad is that there have been efforts to remove them, but doing so is extremely dangerous because of the altitude, temperatures, and uneven ground. People have died attempting it in the past. Not sure if they've managed to succeed since I last read about it in 2018. Edit, I'm not 100% sure the podcast was Case File since I listened to the episode I mentioned 3 years ago. It could have been another true crime podcast. Also, thanks for my first Reddit award. Damn, I wish I remember his name. Years ago I watched a video on YouTube of Elvis' last phone call which was recorded. In the comments there was this guy who had claimed to know Elvis personally and who went on about how he was in his final days. I grew very suspicious. I clicked his YouTube channel and found more comments on other dead celebrity videos of him claiming to be a family friend. I searched this guy's name and found his weird as website. It was the most bizarre shit I've ever seen. It was full of long posts about how this guy was a lead designer and architect in some important buildings worldwide. It also chronicled all of his celebrity friends. Guy was definitely schizophrenic, I assume. Finding his website was just so odd. It's like looking into a portal into his mind. Since then I've become very interested in schizophrenia, and I've happened to stumble upon others who seem to have it. There's also this guy in LinkedIn who is a writer. He goes on these rambles on his LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter about a girl who was killed. But his sentences are all circular, if that makes sense. Almost like talking with someone with dementia who keep repeating the same thing over and over. Except this guy has been doing the same thing for years. Just lost in a possible fairy tale. The mind is fucked. It was 3 months ago, in the Ask Reddit thread, "What is something you regret knowing?" Or something. A user called out another user as a person we all know exists among us, but have never met. The comment was removed by a moderator, so I can't tell you either user involved, but let me sum it up for you. The user being called out is clearly a psychopath. Her entire post history is that she has a desire to vivisect and torture another person to death. She admits she has this desire, and it is a pretty obsessive desire based on their framing, and believe wholeheartedly that everyone has these desires, and that she was normal. She adamantly argues that the only reason people deny having those feelings is because of the social taboo of it, and that everyone around them is lying to save face, that she's the only person with the gall to admit it. She claims she will never act on it, because the fear of getting caught is too great, but that seems to be her only inhibition. She has multiple, buried, dead in the water threads in this subreddit asking questions like, why are people afraid to talk about this shared feeling? What is your murder fantasy? How would you dissect a living person if you knew you could get away with it? She also claims to be asexual. Clearly that otherwise sexual desire is redirected toward this, based on the enthusiasm she has in talking about it. She claims that the only people she has shared these feelings with in her real life are her mother, and her husband. The most unsettling thing is, the last I checked, she was trying with her husband to get pregnant. It's been on my mind a lot as of late, in that it is a prime example of a mentally unwell person saying, "I'm like this, and I'm normal. Therefore, everyone is like this because normal people are like this," and this concept had been coming up a lot in my personal life as of late.